Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a seriously unsettling, totally true account from back in 1987. We're going to systematically unpack how a young family's totally practical, desperate search for an affordable home in Delhi rapidly turned into an absolute paranormal nightmare. Now, we aren't just telling a spooky ghost story here. We are actually mapping out the precise anatomy of a haunting, day by day, to understand exactly how an unseen threat escalates and totally exploits human psychology.
You know how pretty much any massive disaster usually starts with a blatantly ignored warning? Well, when Ramesh Majumdar told his sister about this great room he'd found, her immediate, incredibly eerie advice was just, look for someone else. But as we see time and time again when logic and financial pressure take the wheel, cognitive dissonance sets in hard. This glaring red flag, completely ignored. Ramesh made the fatal mistake of choosing a sweet bargain over a very clear local warning.
So, Phase 1, the perfect bargain. Let's talk about Ramesh. He was a super practical, logic-driven guy working a government job with the railways. He wanted to move his wife, his 4-year-old son Sarthik, and his 2-year-old son from their village in West Bengal to be with him. He manages to find this remarkably cheap flat in Gandhinagar, Delhi. It's close to his sister's house, which makes total practical sense, so he happily pays a hefty 2-month advance without a second thought. To Ramesh, the numbers added up perfectly, and that completely blinded him to anything that didn't fit his neat little spreadsheet reality. Now picture the geography of this house, because it is absolutely crucial to understanding the intense isolation they were about to face. You walk into this large open courtyard with mango and jamun trees. The elderly landlord lives right there in the ground floor quarters. But when you go upstairs to the first floor corridor, there are exactly 2 rooms. One is the rented room for Ramesh's family, and sitting directly across from where this young family sleeps is a permanently locked room, supposedly belonging to the landlord's son. So they're entirely cut off, sharing a tight, confined space with an unknown, locked variable. Which brings us to Phase 2, shadows and whispers. Right from day 1, the mother feels this heavy, immediate unease in the air. But it's on day 5 that this incubation period completely shatters. Ramesh is away on a work trip to Rewari. The mother is sitting near her door cooking dinner when she clearly, unmistakably watches a human shadow walk right past her curtain. She immediately steps out to look, and the shadow has completely vanished. Where did it go? Directly into that permanently locked upstairs room across the hall.
Now here's where it gets wild. It's where cultural folklore literally collides with reality. The very next day, the mother is downstairs washing clothes. Out of nowhere, she hears a scream, rushes upstairs, and finds her 2-year-old sitting on the bed, laughing and actively interacting with thin air. Back in West Bengal, she would use stories of the how, which is like a traditional Bengali boogeyman, to scare the kids into eating their dinner. But standing right there in that room, she realized with absolute terror that her fictional how had shockingly materialized right in their living space.
It's the classic, incredibly frustrating divide, the believer versus the skeptic. On one side, the mother is experiencing genuine, rapidly escalating terror. She's seeing shadows, feeling physical dread, watching her toddler interact with an invisible entity. And on the other side, Ramesh stubbornly dismisses the whole thing as pure imagination. He is fiercely practical and absolutely refuses to forfeit that 2-month advance over what he calls silly fears. I mean, even the elderly landlady downstairs brushes it off, telling the frantic mother the kid probably just saw a cat.
Phase 3, the haunting escalates, because of course the entity wasn't content with just playing in the shadows. This marks the terrifying moment the haunting aggressively breaks the rules of our physical world. The mother, who is feeling exhausted and unwell from the constant, suffocating dread, tries to take a nap next to her sleeping kids on a cold afternoon. She pulls a blanket over herself. As she sleeps, she suddenly feels the heavy blanket being deliberately and gently pulled completely off her body by invisible hands.
So ask yourself this: how does someone aggressively knock on a first-floor window from an empty, narrow alleyway? The physics here are just impossible. It's getting dark, the mother is standing near the door, and suddenly, bang! An aggressive knock on the window. She stands up to check, but freezes. They're on the first floor. That window overlooks a narrow, totally empty alleyway with a sheer drop. There is literally no way a physical person could be knocking from outside. And right as that terrifying realization sets in, a deep, incredibly angry growl erupts directly from the window. The mother just screams and runs out of the room. She grabs the landlord. They rush back upstairs, and what they find is just heartbreaking. 4-year-old Sartik is sitting on the bed, sobbing hysterically. He points to the empty space and cries out, "Mom, how did he come? How did he come? He will take us with him." The child is deeply, visibly terrified of a presence that is explicitly promising to abduct them. And incredibly, driven by that stubborn financial desperation, Ramesh still refuses to break the lease. He tells his terrified wife they just need to tough it out.
Phase 4. Face-to-face. We have reached the violent climax of this insane 9-day ordeal. It's Sunday morning. Ramesh is downstairs taking a shower. The mother is cooking, her back turned to the bed where Sarthik is sitting. Without any warning whatsoever, Sarthik is violently thrown off the bed onto the hard floor. The confused, hurt 4-year-old cries out, "Mom, you pushed me!"
Under this unbelievable pressure, the whole family dynamic just fractures. As the mother frantically tries to comfort Sarthak, a woman's voice whispers directly into her ear, "Get out of here or I'll kill everyone." Completely blinded by panic, she grabs her son and sprints down the corridor. But as she reaches the top of the stairs, a heavy, invisible force shoves her hard from behind. They tumble all the way down, and Sarthak's head is cut open, bleeding profusely. Ramesh hears the screams, runs up, sees his bleeding kid, and in peak, stubborn cognitive denial, he cruelly scolds his terrified wife, shouting, "You can't even handle a child."
But you see, Ramesh's absolute, blinding skepticism is about to slam right into a terrifying reality. Later that Sunday night, Ramesh is sitting alone in the room at a desk by the window writing a letter to his parents. Out of nowhere, the window knocks. Thinking it's a neighborhood thief, Ramesh angrily grabs a stick and rips back the curtain, totally expecting a physical intruder. Instead, staring right back at him is a floating, terrifying girl with wide, dead eyes, her hair covering her face. She looks straight into Ramesh's eyes and delivers a final, lethal ultimatum.
Yep. At that exact moment, Ramesh finally believed his wife. I mean, the dramatic irony here is off the charts. It literally took a direct, face-to-face death threat from a floating apparition for this fiercely practical, stubborn guy to instantly drop all of his precious logic. He didn't wait for morning, he suddenly didn't care at all about that 2 months advance rent, he locked the room, grabbed his family, and they fled to his sister's house in the dead of night.
Just look at this timeline. The escalation is insanely rapid. In a mere 9 days, this family went from just feeling a heavy energy to surviving a violent face-to-face encounter. And here's an interesting detail. When Ramesh marched back and demanded his deposit the next morning, the landlord's reaction was super suspicious. Instead of just agreeing or fighting him on it, the landlord casually suggested Ramesh just send his family away to the village for 10 to 15 days, totally implying he knew exactly what was happening in that room and figured it would just blow over.
Phase 5. The locked room's secret. So the family is safely out, finally, right? But now they start talking to the neighbors in the surrounding colony. And it's through these neighbors that Ramesh's family finally learns the grim, hidden truth about the property they had just barely escaped from.
And this right here reveals the true anatomy of a curse and how dark trauma manifests and lingers in confined spaces. That locked room upstairs? It hadn't always belonged to a son living in the U.S. It originally belonged to the landlord's 22-year-old daughter. She had fallen into a forbidden romance, but her strict parents absolutely refused the marriage. Consumed by grief, the young woman committed suicide right inside that upstairs room. But the tragedy didn't actually end there. The parents were so incredibly angry, their egos so heavily bruised by the scandal, that they actually denied their own daughter proper last rites. This profound, ultimate disrespect trapped her rage, turning her into a deeply violent spirit that fiercely guarded that upstairs corridor.
But guys, the absolute most sickening piece of the puzzle is this. Sarthak wasn't the first victim. The neighbors revealed a very real history of violence. A few months after the daughter's death, a different family had moved in. Their young boy was up on the roof flying a kite when he was violently pushed over the railing by an unseen force. Right before he succumbed to his severe head injuries in the hospital, the little boy told doctors someone had shoved him straight from the front. Sarthak had barely survived the exact same entity.
Which brings us to the ultimate question of today's explainer. Ramesh Majumdar literally almost lost his entire family because he was blinded by practicality and a really cheap price tag. In our everyday rush for the perfect bargain, when we shrug off the warnings and brush past glaring red flags, what unseen horrors are we blindly walking into? It really makes you wonder, how many other permanently locked rooms are just hiding in plain sight out there? Thanks for exploring this chilling true account with me today. Stay curious, stay observant, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.